Hello and welcome to Explore Digital Speakers. My name is Anne Cortez and I work as a regional communications consultant with the Asia Foundation. It's my pleasure to be your host for today. Explore Digital is part of the Go Digital ASEAN initiative, which provides digital training and mentoring to underserved individuals and communities across Southeast Asia. The program is implemented by the Asia Foundation with funding from Google.org, Google's philanthropic arm, and is endorsed by the ASEAN Coordinating Committee on Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprises. This online speaker series is designed to connect you with fellow small businesses across the region. So every month, we try to bring together a panel of experts and inspiring MSMEs to share their expertise, insights, and success stories on various business and digital trends. In today's session, I'm excited to welcome three amazing speakers who will join us today and over 700 viewers from across ASEAN. We're curious to know where you're tuning in from. And so if you're joining on YouTube or if you're joining on Zoom, please let us know in the chat box which country or city you're joining from. As you do that, we will go over some housekeeping reminders. First, we encourage active participation throughout the session. It is our goal to make this experience as engaging and interactive as possible. For those joining on Zoom, later in our Q&A, please write your questions in the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. And for those joining on YouTube, you may use the chat box to share your questions. We encourage you to interact with our panelists and other participants by sharing your thoughts, comments, and even emojis in the chat box. And for this session, we are providing local language interpretations in Thai, Vietnamese, Khmer, and Bahasa languages. So for you who would like to listen in to your local language audio, all you have to do is go to the interpretation tab, which you can find at the bottom of your screen. And if you're hearing both English and your local language audio, please unselect the original audio so that you'll only hear the local language translation. Later on, when we finish the session, we will show a QR code and a link to a 1-minute feedback survey, and we're giving a certificate of participation to those who are filling that out. And finally, this webinar may be recorded and distributed as part of the Go Digital ASEAN program. Today's session is on building an inclusive digital economy for local communities. And in the next hour, we will hear from our speakers and exchange ideas on the role of partnership and capacity building in bridging the digital divide in the region. Now let's welcome our guests for today. First, we have Veronica Baguio, who is the founder of Balik Batik, a clothing social enterprise that promotes Filipino indigenous artistry while supporting the livelihood of weavers and designers from the Philippines. Veronica has spearheaded various initiatives and provided educational opportunities to children and people with disabilities, and she continues to pave the way for a more equitable digital future through her work as a trainer for Go Digital ASEAN. Welcome, Veronica. Our second speaker is Irshad Ramtan, who is a sustainability and technology leader dedicated to bridging the digital gap in Southeast Asia. As a founding member of Aggregate, Irshad has implemented digital solutions to empower local rice farmers across the region. He has been to Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, and currently Irshad is also the head of growth at Hatch Singapore, a startup that leverages digital tools to transform the lives of underserved individuals and businesses in the region. Welcome, Irshad. And finally, we have Taipida Mudita Porn, who is a sustainable developer in a software development and digital consultancy company in Thailand. She's also working as a lecturer in digital media technology at Stanford International University. Her work focuses on utilizing technology to serve the needs of local communities, particularly farmers and small business owners in Thailand. Welcome, Kun Taipida. Thank you all, Veronica, Kuntaypida, and Irshad, for taking the time. And we're very excited to hear your stories and learn more about your work in using digital tools to empower your respective communities. Maybe we can start by tracing where and how your story began. So I would propose starting with the social media capital of the world, which is the Philippines. Veronica, can you tell us more about your background and what led you to work with local weavers and artisans in the Philippines, all the way to launching a sustainable clothing business? And I heard that you once went viral. You and Balik Batik went viral online. So we're curious to hear this story. Over to you.
Yes, good morning, Anne, and I'm very glad to be here. So, my background really is in psychology and education. So, I'm a teacher, I work in a school. But because of my travels all over Southeast Asia, I was more aware of different clothings that are local. My friends from Southeast Asia would wear, and I was more aware about how other countries were in touch with their traditional clothing and fabrics. So that's true. I actually did go viral, and that's the reason why I decided on starting a social enterprise because I wanted to wear something very Filipino. But I was only thinking of myself and my friends. But because of a post that I put up 4 years ago, it went viral, and that it showed me that more Filipinos are interested to support local weaves. So it's very interesting that this business did start because of social media, because of digital tools. So right now, that's where I'm at, and bringing together education, my passion for education, and social enterprise, and promoting digital tools to my partners who are indigenous communities.
That's interesting to know. And before I pass on to Irshad, I want to ask, and maybe our viewers are also curious about this. What is balik batik? What is the name of the meaning? I know it's from the Filipino language. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes. So it's interesting because batik is actually from Indonesia, but we have, because of the connections of the different Southeast Asian countries, we've had batik in the Philippines for very many years, and I grew up with batik. My mom would make it my blanket. But balik in our language is to go back. So I actually thought it sounded nice that it's rhyming, but the idea is to go back to these traditional fabrics that were used long time ago and bringing it in the modern age.
That's very exciting to hear. You mentioned your background is in education psychology. I know, Irshad, you also have an interesting background and you had sort of a plot twist in your career. So can you tell us about more how you got into the sustainability and tech space and how you started working with rice farmers in the region?
Sure, thanks, Anne. And Veronica is interesting because balik is also come back in Bahasa Melayu as well. I think Bahasa Indonesia, but anyway. So hi guys, my name is Irshad, and my background actually was in biomedical engineering when I was in undergrad. The premise behind going into that line of study was actually quite straightforward. I liked physics, I liked biology. It seemed like a good fit. But over time, going through my undergraduate um, course, one thing that was bugging me for quite some time was why were medical devices so expensive, and why was it difficult for communities, or like less well-to-do communities around the world? Like, why were they not able to access medical technologies that were um, sorely needed within each of their communities? So throughout undergrad, what I think borderline obsessed about was trying to figure out ways to make these technologies cheaper, kind of distributed in a way that would make sense. And the core question like was how to save lives like across the region. I believed in that so much that I attempted to do a master's degree in biomedical engineering as well. That did not work out. And the reason for that is I was asked to be a co-founder of uh, a non-profit incubator focused on sustainability. And back then, like I was a biomedical engineering student, I had no idea what sustainability was. But over time, what I realized is that um, there were a whole host of other issues around the region as well as around the world that demanded a lot more attention. And it got to the point where I decided to unfortunately give up a career within the biomedical engineering space or the democratization of healthcare because I was looking around, it seemed like there were a lot of other people doing great stuff, and I didn't feel that it was something that I personally had a large degree of access to. And B, I was blessed to be with a great team. The work that we did back then was we were trying to get youth around the region to start companies around Southeast Asia to solve sustainability, specifically environmental related challenges in Southeast Asia. That went on for 3-4 years. I think over time in the second part of my career up till now, it was more a matter of stumbling into tech as a field where I started in the product space. Like I was a product manager in basically every company that I've been in up till now. And stumbling into aggregate was, I think, serendipitous because the JD was just something that my friend saw in some group on a PDF, and I was like, what is going on with this company? And I talked to the founder and I felt that he had a good head on his shoulders. Um, he was very passionate about making sure that the economic empowerment of rice farmers was something that was achievable. And for 2 years, we tried to play the angle of how do we get rice farmers around Southeast Asia access to cheaper financing. I can talk more about that later, but I think that's basically the arc of how I ended up in aggregate.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Irshad. And I like when you talked about serendipity. I think similar to Veronica, it's exposing herself, attending all these events, and then one thing led to another. And now maybe we hand it over to Taipida. Kun Taipida, you share the same industry with Irshad in that you also work with local farmers and in the environment space. So we'd like to hear your story. I know you have decades of experience working with an NGO, with digital programs. So tell us how you get started in your work. Over to you.
Okay,ค่ะ. Thank you very much and very nice meeting all of you. Again, my name is Taipida and my background is in visual communication and art and technologies, where I get my graduate. And when I came back to Thailand, I started working as a lecturer in several university. And at the moment, I'm teaching at creative media design. This is under Stanford University. I also work as a contractor for one of the private sector, Yip in Soy, where we have a sustainable department. Mainly for me, I focusing on the food security, where we try to do zero waste. We try to make sure that the value of the surplus or produce that we got from the farmer is value added, transform or make changes to preserve it or make it longer. So that's mainly what I do. But earlier than that, I also work in the international NGO or other foundations where I work closely with organic farmer, sometimes with rice from farmers. So I get to learn a lot about different crop, different things, and how I could help them. I also have a project that I use digital technology mainly with the SMS. At that time, it was like the quick and the inexpensive tools for them. So I started in Cambodia, where I work with local farmer, and also they are the women leader, where we work with a local partner. We get small grant for phone, small grant from service provider to link them up and send in SMS messages, for example, market price, weather forecast, or some related news that they need. So that quite a big change for them in order to receive messages or market price earlier than before. Yeah. So mainly that's what I did. All right.
Thank you, Kuntay Pida, and certainly we'll dive deeper into your
Right,
work and how you're
right.
helping and empowering the communities later on. Now that we've heard about your origin story or your background, let's now talk about the core or the meat of your work. So, whenever we hear about empowering communities, we often think about going to far flung areas, right? And I'm sure each of you in your careers have this firsthand experience. So, can you tell us and let our viewers hear what's your experience like going into the communities? What's your experience like talking to the different people, the artisans, the farmers, small business owners? And from there, what are the challenges and issues that you found? Maybe this time we'll start with Irshad and then go on to Kuntay Pida and then finally Veronica.
So thanks. So the question over here, or the prompt over here is, what the experience has been like interacting with different groups around the region. Maybe to contextualize further, throughout the 2 years over in aggregate, I've had the opportunity to interact with farmers in Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand. Uh, my colleagues went to Philippines, so I unfortunately did not manage to interact with rice farmers in the Philippines. One thing that we've realized is that some of the core challenges are similar. So what we've identified is that there are two core challenges. The first being the cost of financing is way too high, in the sense that you would think a unsecured loan of 30%, like on an individual level, is crazy. That's basically the baseline for farmers around the region, and it's not surprising, or rather, like, it's not uncommon for interest rates to be much higher than that, depending on how formal the financing is, or how much access farmers have to like actual financial institutions as opposed to informal lending. The second and I think more recent challenge that we've identified is that farmers are operating within the context of a changing climate. And on the one hand, we can kind of think about it in terms of, like, on an academic level, yields are going to go down, etc., etc. But on a very on the ground level, farmers do have a whole host of different concerns that they've raised to us when interacting with them, including will they have ready access to water? Would the heat result in rice crops basically like growing at a slower rate, etc.? And I wouldn't talk too much about what the long-term implications are, because this is a inclusivity panel, not a climate change panel. But what I will say is that there is a need for us to sort of be able to disseminate information and to help farmers, on the one hand, build a case for lowering the cost of financing, so that we can go to financial institutions and say, look, like, this is something that they're going to do anyway, and this is something that, like, they've had a history of doing. So can't we figure out a way to lower the cost over here? I won't go too much into the solutions. That's a challenge side. And on the other hand, and this is where the differences sort of comes in. Different countries handle the challenge of information dissemination quite differently, because of different political systems in different countries. Like, there are certain ways that villages are managed, and as a result, but the core of it is that information still needs to be disseminated to farmers for them to be able to navigate a changing climate over time. And those are things that we try to focus quite a lot on. I wouldn't say that we have a full solution on, like, how to make sure that rice farmers continue to be able to make a living, continue to, like, navigate all of this. We have some successes to it that I'll be happy to elaborate more about later. Yeah.
Thank you, Irshad. I heard you said bridging the gap in financing, and I'm sure this happens not only in the countries that you mentioned, but in many communities across the region. And then second is bridging the information gap, or how to facilitate more knowledge sharing. And I'm excited to hear later the digital solution that you and your team found for this. But before we go to that, over to Kuntaipida to talk about the challenges in Thailand and the different issues that farmers, business owners that you've worked with have experienced before.
Right. I would like to share some of my experience working internationally, like the one that I just said earlier about the SMS. Um, I've been working with a farmer and women leader, and I think my challenging is because I feel like I'm a stranger going into their area, their field. So first thing that I would like to do is like we need to start a good friendship, good relationship. Felt like we are one big team that we are going to work together. I set kind of like a framework. So we are looking at the same direction or the same goal. So we kind of like, oh, this is what we are working toward that area. So once the relationship is good, then I think that's a lot easier to work with as a big team because we come from different country, different levels. So that would be one set. Later on, like how can I link this team with other, maybe with the local partner, maybe with different organization. I think that would be when or how I start with the core team. Yeah.
Thank you, Kuntaipida. I think that's very important. You emphasized the feeling of coming in as a stranger. And I'm sure I've spoken with Veronica before. She also mentioned something like you have to understand them first, know their story before you become one with them. And so over to you, Veronica, to tell us how you went into the areas of Mindanao and other parts of the Philippines and how you interacted with farmers and what are the challenges they faced.
Thanks so much, Anne. And I really like what Taipida said about developing a friendship first. And I really do feel that because I work with indigenous communities from all over the country. And so not being part of their ethnic group or their indigenous group, I have to be friends or understand their context first. And so my experience in working with groups or communities that are really far flung has been interesting because digital tools allow us to cover the space, but then there are still some huge gaps. For example, I work with the Manobo of Bukidnon, and when I traveled, it was 4 hours drive and flights to get there. And when I got there, they have no electricity. And so I realized why it takes them so long to respond to me sometimes because they have to go down from their mountain to find signal or to charge their phones. And so, that understanding of seeing where they're coming from and where they really are makes our partnership better. And so that's one of the challenges I saw. As much as we're able to close the gaps with, social media is, Philippines, we love social media. There's still the infrastructure that's lacking. If you don't have electricity in your area, how can you continuously use the like social media or use your phone? And so that's really taught me about how we can manage working with our partners. It's understanding where they're from, what we can maximize with the work that we have, or even scheduling, because sometimes, and you would know, like there are seasons for harvest. So since my partners they also do farming, sometimes they're unable to like work on our weaves because they have to harvest or they have to plant. So just that understanding of where they're really coming from, and the challenges they face allow us as a social enterprise to help them or work with them more. But it's a lot of things going on.
For sure. Veronica, you mentioned about infrastructure barriers. Do you also notice any differences in the issues faced, for example, by one tribe compared to another group, and particularly those that relate to digital access or opportunities?
I would say yes, because some groups have they have signal in their area, then it's easier to communicate. But then there are other groups who are really in far-flung areas where signal is really choppy. So even sending a photo, because fabrics are very visual. We need to know what they look like. So sometimes the struggle of, can you send us a photo? And they would have to say, can we send it tomorrow? We're not in the area where we can send photos. And so that poses challenges because as a business, sometimes we have to be fast. It's fast paced. We have to get the clothes out. We have to make our projects. So there are differences, and it's really about managing what those differences are.
Good point. Thank you. And speaking of managing the differences and the challenges, now let's move on to the different solutions that you came up with to bridge the digital divide in the communities. Maybe this time we start with Veronica. Tell us how Balik Batik is, empowering the local artisans, and what sort of digital tools and solutions have you brought to the community and they have adopted, and now it's aiding both their livelihood and also in a way raising awareness to Philippine tradition and creativity.
Yes, so to further contextualize, I started this enterprise back in 2020. So you can imagine everyone was in lockdown. So everyone was online and everyone was forced to be online. Sometimes I say forced because I felt that my partners who I was reaching out to at that time had no choice but to go online. For example, even in receiving payments, and that's one thing we were really able to help in because our partners were used to a cash only basis. They were used to tourists visiting them in their far-flung areas and paying cash on the spot for the fabrics. But they needed to continue selling even online. And so they found their way online. We even helped some in setting up Facebook pages or even just helping them find Facebook groups where they can sell. But a really concrete solution that we were able to help our partners with is signing them up for e-banking because we learned that some of our partners clients stopped ordering from them because they were not able to accept e-banking payments. So when I learned that, I tried to encourage them, like, you should also try to sign up for this online banking channels. And it has got, we really did help them in signing up because there were, they're confused on how to do the video verification of the face. So it's a lot of back and forth. And also there's the age difference. Some of our partners are a bit older. And so this was more of a struggle to them. And I'm at that age where I really just grew up with the internet. So it just came easily for me. So I think that knowledge transfer was really important in bridging the gap between what they needed at that time, which was really to keep up with the times. And I like to say right now, because I'm doing training for Go Digital IC, and I like to say, if you're not online, you don't really exist. And so my partners had to learn that really during the pandemic, but right now it's much better. But during that year, it was really a lot of helping each other and a lot of communication. So that's a solution we came in because as a social enterprise, we did start online, but my partners were used to face. So I think it kind of helped for them to see how does an online shop like ours promote the weaves, and in that turn, they saw ways to promote themselves online as well.
That's great. And I know that you've taught them how to use digital banking, digital apps, and maybe this is a good segue to Irshad. Talking about financing also for the communities. Did you have the same experience? Like, what is it like working with the farmers? Do they have access to those digital financing apps, or you came in and your team also had to work with them and see how you can take them from point A to point B?
Yeah, it's interesting in the case of farming around Southeast Asia because there wasn't really like a one size fit all description of how things were. So, for example, we had a small group of early adopters in central Thailand, Antong specifically, and I think the level of both digital literacy as well as like just broader digital usage was actually quite high. They were using digital banking. Some of them were going and using like Word documents to document the entire season. It was really cool. But then we have the flip side of like other communities, both within Thailand as well as like the rest of ASEAN, where the reality is that there was no signal within the village, and it's kind of challenging to be able to expect like a level of let's not even talk about literacy. If the access isn't even there, like what's there to be illiterate about? But I will say that it's interesting because in aggregate, the main piece of work that I was trying to do over the 2 years that I've been there so far is I developed a farmer companion application called CropPal. And the purpose of this application, and you might be wondering, farmers using, oh, you have it, nice.
I do. Yes.
I forgot that that's still online. That's cool.
This is a
Uh,
demo page,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I didn't. Where'd you get it? Okay, anyway. All right. So, for CropPal, the purpose of it is really straightforward. Like we're trying to get farmers to be a lot more diligent about monitoring their crops as well as recording. Like through that monitoring process, like we want them to record a lot more. And this plays into our desire to be able to reduce the cost of loans for them, because without any information from the formal financing side of things, there's no way that they can justify to their higher ups that these are a population of farmers that would be able to gain, like they can't cut the interest rates because it's just too risky. There's no data that backs up like any form of justification. And this is not like bankers are evil, they don't want to reduce the interest rate. It's really like someone has a boss who answers to another boss who answers to another boss. And to create a case, like we believe very strongly that there are two ways that you could do it. You could either appoint a farmer leader of some sort that does this for the whole community, where a large amount of trust is required for that one individual, which is an approach that certain other startups have taken, and I think it's worked to interesting degrees as well. Or we could do the riskier approach of trying to get as many farmers as possible on board to digitize the process for themselves, to kind of take ownership for themselves, which, I mean, it sounds good in theory. Like I will say that there are challenges with this approach as well, including some farmers are not familiar with how to kind of operate a smartphone at all. But I think the initial results that we've seen over the past 2 years of operation have been quite heartening, in that regardless of where we go, so long as the language is correct, and from our perspective, like we've kind of made it as simple as possible, and we use pixel art to kind of make it less daunting. We've seen adoption kind of grow within the populations that we've worked with, and I remain hopeful, because we also have encountered situations in different countries where farmers have actually requested features that we did not think about, that we eventually implemented as well. The most prominent of which is I can name two examples. So farmers actually or at least the ones that we talk to, like they identify their fields through the size of their field. So we had the assumption that like they named their fields. So when we found this out, like we implemented a way to kind of indicate the size of the field that they've put within their app, and that was the predominant way that farmers kind of identified the field that they need to be recording for. The other feature that we've built based on their feedback is that they wanted to not just record what they were doing on the fields, they also wanted to record financial information, like how much they were spending and how much they were earning. And that's something that you would think is, as a developer, like we would be able to kind of think, yeah, that's super obvious. That was not obvious to us, because our entire approach was we wanted to get them to get a higher credit score through their farming activities, not their financial activities. So I would say that as much as there are challenges and like that, the situation across the region is very, very, very diverse. I am hopeful that with our group of early adopters and early majorities, like this is something that we would be able to really move the needle on economic empowerment within the rice farming space moving forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Irshad. And I like how you said that you and your team had to listen to their feedback. And for sure, they know what is best for them, and you were able to integrate it in the digital platform that you built. Another thing you mentioned that you're trying to make the technology as simple as possible. And I'm sure Kuntay Pida has a lot to share about this. Earlier, you've talked about a simple SMS for
Right.
women leaders, and also simple technology or devices that you distribute to communities and you train them how to use it. So please tell us more about this digital capacity building initiative that you've been part of.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, of course, when I went to the field or went down to see this community, is they have a lot of different challenges. Like for example, I think it's just like both of you guys just said the not only the tools that we have, but lack of electricity, or sometimes we have to work with solar cell uh charger in order to get the electricity ongoing, or the no signal at all. So it takes us longer than we expected. And also women leader, they are not into texting at that time. So it's kind of like challenging for us to take time to teach them to share all this capacity. And also we of course we always listen to them and see what they really need. So in Cambodia, it's a little bit challenging for us, but once it get going, and they just take it away. So it's they once they got it, it's just like they can use it for any other thing. They call each other, they set up meeting, they even call police when things in emergency. So I felt like, oh, my phone is not only for SMS but for any other thing for their living. So I felt like, oh, okay, this is working. I also had experience working with in Indonesia. This is again in the remote area. Of course, they don't have electricity or signal, and it's so difficult to get it. But at that time, we try to work with two-way communication, and it quite worked because in Indonesia, they are very into texting. But then again, it takes some time to get the whole thing ongoing, and also linking up with a community and then the local partner. Like once they get the feedback, then what to do next. And also in Sri Lanka, we also work with this, but then we work in terms of the early warning system. So we use the SIM phone as a signal for sensor the flood warning. So let's say if the water in the river is raising up or is going down, so we can see right away what is going on. So we kind of get like early warning system. But lately, I also work with other foundation. This is back in Thailand. I also work in the community in different provinces. I do capacity building in terms of helping in lifelong learning. And one thing that they lack of is the communication among them. So we try to like set up like a live group in the small area, and also we have the big group that all of them can join. So at first they was like, oh, this they're like a grandpa type. So, oh, no, I don't want to take photo. No, I don't want to share my story. But nowadays, believe me, every single morning I woke up with all the list of things that they want to show. Oh, look what I do. They're so proud. And I felt like, oh, wow. I know it's kind of like in a funny way, but I think in that case, I guess it's kind of success. Like once they get into it, they want to show, they want to share. And I think in terms of link up, they kind of like sharing information. Some of them can even sell the produce among themselves.
Yeah, I heard Kuntay Pida in our conversation before. You also mentioned about you teach farmers and the local community how to how to make videos on social media
Right,
so they can
right.
sell the full
The
production.
audience, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and they can make it more attractive. So the
right, right.
grandfathers and grandmothers in your group have
Can
started
do,
doing that.
yeah, yeah.
That's inspiring. One thing I noticed when the three of you talk about working with the community, I never heard you say, or I never heard you use the word beneficiary. And I really like that because that places the communities in the same level as you and your work. And so I'd like to ask, how do you think how do you build partnership with the community, and how do you think capacity building helps build this? I know this is a big question. How do you think capacity building contributes to building this inclusive economy in the digital space? Who would like to take this question first? Irshad?
Sorry, could you repeat like the 2 pointers? I'm trying to formulate an answer.
Sure. Yeah. So first is if you can tell us stories about how do you form partnerships with the community, and then second is when you have them as a partner, then you go on to building their capacity. How do you think that contributes to building an inclusive digital economy?
Sure. I'll take a shot at it. So the process of forming partnerships is a very, very slow process.
Mm.
And the way that at least in the work that we do with rice farmers, it's not always possible to go to village leaders, co-op leaders directly. For certain countries, it's a matter of access. For other countries, it's a matter of national security, where we actually cannot talk to farmers unless we have, as a foreign actor, like unless we have a permission to go and talk to them, like we cannot. And that's something that is totally understandable, given I think Southeast Asia's broader context, historical context. What I will say is that the process of forming partnerships is, while it's slow, it's something that I think we take in our stride, in the sense that like whoever is currently working on the ground, we generally come in and we don't try to pitch a solution. We're there to try to understand the broader context of the work that they're currently doing, what their objectives are, and then maybe like identifying pain points that they have, and if it's something that we can kind of come in to help out with to have a mutually beneficial sort of arrangement, that's where we come in. If there's something that we cannot identify, that doesn't end the relationship. I think the partnership is also one of those things where let's say we have a partnership with an NGO that has a completely different mandate from what we're doing. I think the benefits of such a partnership is that you have I think a broader perspective of what's going on within the whole region. You're able to sort of piece together information here and there of different countries and uh how the plight of farmers around the region like is like on a more broad level, and you also maybe get insight into techniques that people are using both for the economic empowerment angle as well as the climate change mitigation or adaptation angles as well. So when we have people as partners, I think once the pain points have been identified and once the approach has sort of been put into motion, I think what's important to us is that we communicate as much as possible about what our thoughts are, and how we also communicate like what we see potentially happening in the future as well. Like we try to build hope, we try to build like a larger picture of like what is possible, as opposed to certain people have KPIs, we got to hit the KPIs. We try our best to broaden that perspective as much as we can. Yeah.
Thank you, Irsha. Do you have, Veronica, do you have the same experience working and forming partnerships with local weavers and artisans in the Philippines?
Yes, I do relate to that Irshad shared. There are challenges because sometimes it's difficult to start it face to face. So again, when we started in 2020, it was all online, and I having no background in working with any weavers or having no network or contact at all, I really started by just searching them on Facebook. So it
Mm.
goes to the level of finding weaver and just putting the name of the city or barangay based on research. And and this is like what I can share to business owners. Sometimes it goes to the level of checking who has liked this certain photo and messaging every one of them and saying, "Hi, are you a Tausug weaver? I'm looking for a partner." And I've gotten to that. It's a lot like detective work. I felt like Sherlock at some point because, again, during that time, they were so hard to contact because they were
Mm.
not online. It was so hard to reach out to them. And I'm glad 4 years, that was 4 years ago, 4 years later, my partners are easier to contact because now they have Facebook pages, they're now in
Mm.
Facebook groups. But really, when I started, it was a lot of detective work and a lot of what you would say stalking on Facebook, just saying, is this a weaver? Is she posting about her work?
Mhm.
That's really how it started. But now also, with more trade fairs, I'm glad to say that in the Philippines, there's an increase in appreciation for local artisan work. So there are now more trade fairs. And so I try to go to them and make partners, make new partners. But then sometimes my experience is it's so easy to talk to them face to face. But then when they go off to their regions or their whole house where they're from, then it gets hard again because they don't have so much
Mhm.
access to internet. And so, how do we go on to build their economy? Really, it's again finding that way to connect with them. Again, Philippines has free data on Facebook, and that's really helped
Yeah.
us connect, right? It's really helped us connect even if they don't have like and it's gotten to that level even where they'll be like, I want to send you photos of our available designs right now, but I don't have data, so I send them data, I give them load so that they have
Mm.
the load to send me photos. But for me, it's all about bridging the gap because then that interaction makes them more used to selling online as opposed to really just relying for people to visit where they are. And that gives them more encouragement to find that the digital space is really a place, there's a marketplace in the online
Mhm.
world. There's really a market where they can sell. And I'm so glad that 4 years ago it was so hard to find these Filipino weavers and partners, but
Mhm.
now they're so easy to find. They're there online. I just search weaver and there's a lot I can reach out to it already. So it's really looking hopeful for the Filipino
Mhm.
weavers as they get more used to the digital space. And of course, there are some groups that are still a bit left behind, I would say. And we're really hoping to be able to reach out to those indigenous groups and see what partnerships can be made in the future.
I like when you said there's hope, and we're actually getting there. We will begin with a Q&A session shortly, and so we encourage our viewers to drop in your questions in the Q&A box. If you're joining on YouTube, you may also use the chat box function. And I can see here we have 5 questions already. So let's get started. One of the questions we have from Zoom is, how do you ensure that your efforts in empowering local communities are impactful in the long term? So, Irshad, you talked about your work with Aggregate. Veronica, your work with the Balik Batik, and Kuntay Pida, your work with the Yipinsoy. What are the efforts that you're doing to ensure that your work in the community have an impact? Or maybe the question is, what impact have you seen first? And how do you think that can be sustained? Do you want to take this question first, Kuntay Pida?
Okay, well, I try. I guess what I saw is the life changing of the farmer, of the people that I work with. Like once I felt like if we could make changing in their life, then they will do it. For example, if I could link them up with, for example, organic farmer with restaurant or with hotel, once they can sell crop or more crop, or people appreciate them, appreciate what they sell, and they make more income. And I think that
Mm,
would be the way to see, like, if that would be, even if it's a small success, I would say that would be Yeah. Success
Increasing their
story.
income.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
success story still. Yes. Irshad, what impact have you seen in the lives of the farmers? Were you able to connect them to more accessible financing? And how do you and your team try to sustain this
Sure.
impact in the community?
So the way this is not how my boss thinks about it, but like this is, I think, the frame of mind that I think about. There are two types of impact that you can make. There's the direct impact and the systemic impact. The feature of one over the other is that systemic impact takes a lot longer to introduce, but when it's introduced, it's a lot stickier. And when we're working with large institutions and very disparate communities around Southeast Asia, the way that our organization is set up is that, unfortunately, the level of direct impact of we do a thing and someone benefits from it more immediately is not so possible, because there are a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people that need to say yes, a lot of pitfalls that we need to take into consideration. Like, we don't want to create a system, for example, where like we are just trapping farmers into like another debt cycle, for example. Like, that's the reality of the financing industry as a whole. Like, we can say that like, oh, we want to do financial inclusion, but like if we include them into a debt cycle, that's not really a positive impact. So I think because aggregate is coming up to its is it third or fourth year? Oh my goodness, I don't even know how old the company is. So I've been around for 2 years, and I think within the 2 years, the level of direct impact that we made is actually really, really small, and that to me is not a failure but a feature. Because a lot of the time that we've spent is on trying to understand what's going on the ground, trying to piece together like different components, trying to interact with like the different stakeholders. And I think what we're gunning for is, in addition to farmers using our app as a utility, which is the case of what's going on right now, CropPel as a tool for systemic impact is something that we think would materialize within the next perhaps 2 to 3 years, I suppose, where initial pilots will get off the ground, where we'll actually use the private sector mechanisms in addition to development funding that we are facilitating as well. And this is something that I'm hopeful, and like it's something that, even though we don't see the direct impact of our work right now, it's something that still drives the team to do the work that we do anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned, Irshad, the pilot of CropPile, and it will be used and launched in different locations. We have a question from the chat, a comment and a question. The person said, "Very cool application. Where can I start learning about it?" So if you can drop the link to the app, or to know more about the program you're doing, that will be.
So the app itself, I'll drop the link to the demo, I suppose. I'll do that later because I can only message hosts and panelists. Whoops.
Sure, no
But
problem.
with regards to the application itself, it's currently not open access, unfortunately. You can search for CropPel on the Play Store. It's something that is available. But before we've decided not to use the Play Store as a wide distribution channel first, because I don't know, maybe I'm just a stickler for perfectionism, which I should not be. But I suppose like we do want to make sure that there's a certain level of quality, and the design is designed in such a way where we can support people onboarding themselves. Right now, the onboarding process is very involved. We go to each individual village, we gather about 20 to 30 farmers at a time, and then we go through that onboarding process. But yeah, I'll drop the link to the demo. I think it's a fun little demonstration, as the word demo implies, of what the intention is, and I guess the vision of how we're trying to build CropPel up.
Cool, thank you. And now let's move on to Veronica. What is the impact that you've seen in the community? Irshad mentioned about direct impact, systemic impact. Do you also see and feel the same when you work with local weavers?
Yes, I really like the framework with which he explained their impact. And I would also like to use that framework. So systemic and direct. When it comes to systemic, I would like to think that us as a small social enterprise have helped in increasing awareness and appreciation for Filipino weaves and more knowledge about indigenous groups. As an educator myself, I've always made it a point that we're not just selling fabrics, or selling clothes. We are telling a story. We are bringing Filipinos back to our heritage and culture. And so we see that as our wider mission. And so when it comes to a more systemic impact, we want to raise awareness, increase appreciation, and with those two, you lead that into action. And what is the concrete action as a social enterprise, as a store? It's to wear Filipino fabrics or wear Filipino clothing. And so we'd like to believe that over the past 4 years, we've grown a lot on social media, and I can see that it's really impacted those, especially who follow us, because I've had interactions with college students who go up to me and say, I follow your Instagram account and I really learn a lot about weaves. And I've had someone tell me that it's affected the course that they took, because then they realize I want to learn more about indigenous weaves, and we've had students research Filipino weaves because of us. And so that makes me really feel that there is an increasing appreciation for Filipino weaves, and we're able to support that. And that goes directly into a more direct impact to our partners, because with
Mhm.
a larger market, you have an increase in livelihood. And with more sales, you can bring in more people, the wider community to join in. Because with our partners, it's not just families, it's entire communities. It's aunties and cousins and sisters all coming in together to
Mhm.
create their designs. So I think that's the impact we've had, and I'm really glad that we're not the only one. In the
Mhm.
Philippines, there are a lot of small social enterprises, mostly women-led, that are also supporting this. So we're not the only actor. There's a lot of us, and that really makes me again hopeful for the future.
That's great. I love how you mentioned about enhancing also their livelihoods, their networks, and future prospects for building their businesses, empowering their community. We have two questions here, and I think I'll combine this to one. The question is, how can we ensure that the partners and the community remain committed to the advocacy, since because of the challenges it can be taxing, they may find excuses to stop the work. So how do you motivate them to continue on this digital journey, and are there any incentives to push the communities to go online and remain online? Maybe we'll start with the Kuntay Pita.
Yeah, I would like to say this. When we start a project, mainly because we would like them to be, we would like them to become the owner at the very end. So I think we start very early, like even though all the capacity building, all the friendship that we built, all the relationship among the local community with a restaurant or whoever, but at the very end, we will give the owner back to them. I felt like if we start at the very beginning, they knew it right away that at the very end, because we are just the staff, we have to leave we just come set up, help them, and then we leave. So at the very end, they would be the owner. So I think start the ownership very early. That would be the way to make the whole thing sustainable or last forever. I hope that would be the thing for them.
I like that. Starting with ownership and making sure
Right.
they're really interested in
Yeah. Right.
the advocacy, the impact that it's
Yeah.
creating.
Right. Yep.
Thank you, Kuntay Pida. Veronica or Irshad, any incentives that maybe you've tried introducing to communities, or any approaches to make them invested and have the ownership in this digital transformation?
I think I can go quickly. You know, for us, what we communicate is that you're just gonna earn more money if you go online. It's very direct and very clear. People are
Mhm.
buying online. They're used to online shopping, and that's
Yeah.
the incentive, right? That's what we also communicate when we do trainings. It's for digital growth. It's you're gonna earn more money. And I think that but of course, additional to that, it's also about increasing awareness, reaching people where they are in the online space, and reaching people from far away. But ultimately, when they see very clearly that it increases their sales, it helps their
Mhm.
livelihood, it does help in making sure they continue with using digital tools.
Good. How about you, Irshan?
For the time being, the incentive that we provide is monetary in nature, and the reason we do that is because in order to gather between 20 to 30 farmers in a single location, it actually is a pretty involved process of them coming down to the location. So we remunerate them for their time as well as for travel expenses. But beyond that, I think the technique that we use, I mean, do we even call it a technique? I think the approach that we use is that we try to get them to understand the purpose of why we're trying to do what we
Mhm.
do. And depending, I mean, some don't respond to that, and like they just kind of go through the process, take the money, and go home. I think that's fine. But a surprising proportion, like way more than 50% of the populations that we've engaged with, and mind you, when I say engage, like they engage with the app, and they also engage with a 8-page survey that they need to fill out very, very diligently. Uh,
Mhm.
and the sorts of you can tell how engaged they are from the sorts of answers that they provide. I mean, you can kind of see like the one-word answers, which is fine. And then we see essays kind of coming up now and then about how they want things to be better, or how they would how what ideas they have about the feature sets that we've introduced, ways that we can maybe do things better. I think, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, like we've taken a one size fit all approach, and we just honestly just have to trust that we will encounter people who will be bought in, and we would sometimes encounter people who would not. Yeah.
Right. But I love how all of three of you mentioned the importance of communicating, whether it's tangible incentives in the form of higher sales, more money coming in, helping the livelihood, but also why this is important work, and how I suppose how it can impact not only their lives but future generations, their families, their communities, and hopefully the entire region. We're almost nearing the end of the session, and so I'd like to take this opportunity to ask each of you what are the biggest takeaways from this webinar, and also what advice can you give to our viewers now. So we've had a lot of interesting discussions about connecting the local community with opportunities online, listening into them, addressing their needs, and understanding how to operate from their context. And so, who would like to go first? Your final key takeaway and advice for our viewers.
I don't mind going first, if everyone else is all right.
Please go ahead.
So I suppose like the key takeaway I've got from I think the three of us talking about the different but surprisingly similar, okay, not surprisingly, like the similar work that we do, even though it might take different forms, is that there's I, there's somewhat of a tension between making sure that like we understand the needs of like very, very local communities, while at the same time thinking about ways to get people involved at scale. Uh, and when I talk about scale, it's not about like how do we have a one size fit all approach to get everyone on board. I think the nature of digital as a whole is, and the hope is that like they get to engage in a arena that's a lot bigger, and by that logic they would be able to gain access to more opportunities, more revenue, just be able to make a living from the fact that they are digitalized in one way or another. And so that I think it's a healthy tension, and I think that's something that ultimately like defines the work that we all three of us do as people that would like to build a inclusive digital economy. And I think the one given that this webinar is targeted more for MSMEs around the region, I think first of all, like before thinking about how do you maximize like the inclusivity, I think the responsibility that we have as different organizations and different businesses is that like we do ultimately need to understand like what's the thing that will keep our own organization afloat first. But once that is settled, I think my hope on a broader level is that people are more inspired and more driven to be able to think about what on the one hand allows different communities to come on board, and like on the other hand, like how do we make sure that like the efforts that we have put in the efforts that we put in place, like how they scale as much as possible. I I normally don't beat the we should scale drum, because when I talk in a tech setting, like everyone's talking about scale and I'm like, no, you need to talk to people. But I think this is like the complete opposite. As MSMEs, one thing that would actually benefit both ourselves as well as the people around us is if we have the capacity to scale the impact that we would eventually be able to make for ourselves, for the communities around us, would be a lot larger. And I think that's something that I hope people would kind of think more and try to do more about. Yeah.
Certainly. Thank you, Irshad. Over to you. Kuntay Pida, key takeaways or advice for our viewers?
Right. Well, again, I felt like that the same. Our work is quite similar. We listen to them. We involve them in every step of our work, and of course, at the end, they become the owner of the work itself. So for me, I always say this to my student, and of course, to whenever my team gets struggle with the project, it seemed to be like the project is quite large. It's huge. It might take years. So it seemed impossible to do it. What if we break it down into years, quarter, months, day, week, day, or even hours? If we could like break it down, I think it will make our task a lot easier to handle. And or even if we accomplish this day or this week, we could do a small celebration. I think that way our journey go a lot lighter, a lot enjoyable, and we will be having a lot more fun to work as a team with our team and local partner as well. So if we all won't stress out. So I guess that would be like breaking it down, make sure we handle things easier, and enjoy every journey that you do and celebrate along the way.
Happen ka, Kuntay Pida. And finally, Veronica, key takeaways and advice for our viewers.
First, I want to say thank you to my fellows panelists. I really learned a lot from both of you. And for me, my key takeaway, coming from everything that you've said, is that in building inclusive digital economies, inclusive starts with us immersing in these communities, because we can't, as you mentioned, we can't just go in there without understanding them and knowing their story. We still have to really personally connect with our partners, whether they be indigenous groups or farmers or local communities. And what I realized, and coming from a psychology background, is that economies are made of people. Economies are made up of people, and so we have to understand who these people are, who the players are, and that's our local communities, that's the clients, that's the partners, that's the businesses, and all the players in between. And so in understanding first the people aspect of what an economy is and what digital economies are, we're better able to serve the people and whatever needs are. And by serve, I mean not just our partners, but also what the clients want, what our customers need. And that's how we can really build a more inclusive digital economy for our local communities.
Thank you so much, Veronica. And on that note, we are wrapping up this session. So we encourage you to share your feedback with us by clicking the link in the chat box or scanning the QR code. This will lead you to a 1-minute survey where upon filling it out, you will gain access to a certificate of participation. Further instructions are on your screen. and in the chat box. And if you want to learn more about Go Digital ASEAN and connect with a training provider in your country or your community, do visit our website, godigitalasean.org, and reach out to us on Facebook at Go Digital ASEAN. The links are in the chat box, both on Zoom and on YouTube. Once again, thank you very much to Veronica, to Irshad, and to Kuntay Pida for sharing your time and insights with us. And thank you to our viewers who joined us today. We hope you enjoyed this session as much as we did, and we hope to see you in our next webinar. You can see the details on the screen, and we will open the registration soon, so be sure to sign up. Thank you all. This has been Ann Cortez of the Asia Foundation and Go Digital ASEAN, and we hope to see you again in the next Explore Digital speaker session. Have a good day.